I'll never forget that day. The sun had barely risen, and already the heat was beginning to scorch the dusty, uneven ground of the Millbrook livestock auction. 12-year-old Lucy Henderson was clutching a crumpled $50 bill in her small hand, her worn sneakers kicking up dust with each step. That $50 wasn't just any money. It represented every penny her family had managed to save over the last couple of months, money that was supposed to pay the electricity bill that was past due. The Henderson family had been struggling for a while now, ever since Lucy's father lost his job at the grain elevator 6 months ago. Her mother, Sarah, worked 2 part-time jobs at the local diner and grocery store, but it still wasn't enough. The little farmhouse they lived in on the outskirts of Millbrook had a leaking roof, broken heating, and windows that barely stayed closed during the brutal Montana winters. Lucy had grown up knowing that every dollar mattered, so she spent her free time helping out neighbors with chores, earning a few extra dollars whenever she could. But today was different. She'd heard from her friend Emma about the auction, that there'd be sick and injured animals being sold for cheap, animals that nobody else wanted. And Lucy? Well, she had a special connection with animals. She had a gift, really. She could nurse injured birds, stray cats, and abandoned puppies back to health with nothing but patience and love. Her mom used to say she had magic hands when it came to healing animals. So when she heard about the auction, she knew she had to be there. As she walked through the dusty auction yard, Lucy passed pen after pen of healthy cattle, horses, and sheep, expensive animals, costing hundreds or thousands of dollars, way beyond what her family could afford. The wealthy ranchers and buyers barely even glanced at the small, poorly dressed girl as they discussed their expensive purchases. But Lucy wasn't looking for anything fancy. No, she had her eyes on something else. Near the back of the yard, tucked away in a corner most people avoided, was exactly what she was looking for: a tiny bull calf. The little guy couldn't have been more than 3 months old, and he was in terrible condition. His right front leg was wrapped in a dirty, blood-stained bandage, and he could barely stand, unable to put weight on the injured limb. His ribs were visible through his dull, matted coat, and his eyes? His eyes were so sad, so defeated. Flies buzzed around an infected wound on his shoulder, and he barely lifted his head when Lucy approached the pen. A handwritten sign on the gate read, "Injured calf, as is, $50 or best offer." Lucy's heart broke. She'd seen enough suffering in animals to know this calf was in serious trouble. Without proper medical care, he probably wouldn't make it another week. But something about him, something about the way he looked at her, made her believe he deserved a chance at life. Most people would have seen him as a hopeless case, a waste of money. But Lucy saw a living being who needed help. Pete Morrison, the auction worker, noticed Lucy staring at the calf and walked over with a skeptical look on his face. "You interested in that little bull, kid?" he asked gruffly. "I gotta warn you, he's in bad shape. Got hurt in transport last week, and the infection's been getting worse. The owner just wants to get rid of him." Lucy looked down at the $50 bill in her hand, then back at the injured calf. She knew her mother would be furious. There was no way they could afford this, not with their electricity bill overdue. But something deep inside her wouldn't let her walk away from the poor creature. "What happened to his leg?" Lucy asked softly, her voice full of concern. Pete shrugged. "Caught in the trailer gate during loading, broke it pretty bad. Now it's infected. Honestly, kid, most folks would just put him down. He probably won't make it, even with expensive vet care." Lucy wasn't hearing that. She was determined. She'd helped plenty of animals before, and she wasn't going to let this little bull suffer just because nobody else cared. She looked Pete in the eyes. "I'll take him," she said firmly, surprising herself with her own determination. What will Lucy's parents say when they find out she spent their electricity money on a sick animal? Does this little bull have any chance of survival? Pete raised his eyebrows in disbelief. "You sure about this? That's $50 for an animal that's probably dead within a week. Your parents know you're spending that kind of money." Lucy hesitated. She knew this would be hard to explain to her parents. But the calf, despite his pain, looked at her in a way that made her heart swell. He seemed to be pleading for help, a spark of will to live. "Yes, I'm sure," she said, her voice steady, and before she could change her mind, she handed over the $50 bill. Pete helped Lucy load the calf into the back of old Tom Bradley's pickup truck. Tom, a kind neighbor, shook his head in disbelief as he helped Lucy carefully position the weak animal on a bed of straw in the back of the truck. But Tom didn't say anything. He just drove, his expression unreadable, but every now and then glancing at Lucy through the rearview mirror, like he wanted to ask if she knew what she was doing, but he didn't. He held his tongue. The ride home was silent, and Lucy spent the entire 20-minute drive softly talking to Rusty, trying to keep him calm, telling him everything would be okay. She wasn't sure she believed it herself, but she had to try. When they arrived at the Henderson property, Lucy's mother, Sarah, was hanging laundry on the line behind their small farmhouse. The moment she saw Tom's truck pull up with the calf in the back, her face went from confusion to concern to outright alarm in a matter of seconds. "Lucy Marie Henderson," Sarah called out, dropping the wet shirt she was holding and walking quickly toward the truck. "What in the world is that?" Lucy took a deep breath, knowing the conversation ahead would be tough. "Mom, this is Rusty. He's hurt really bad, and I bought him at the auction to help him get better." Sarah's eyes immediately went to the $50 bill that was no longer in Lucy's hand. "Please tell me you didn't spend our electricity money on a sick animal," she said, her voice rising. Before Lucy could respond, her father, David, emerged from the barn, where he had been fixing a fence post. His expression grew serious the moment he saw the situation unfold. "Lucy, honey, we've talked about this," David said gently but firmly. "We can barely afford to feed ourselves right now, let alone take care of a sick animal that's going to need expensive veterinary care." Lucy's eyes filled with tears, but she stood her ground. "Dad, you should see him. He's so little and hurt, and nobody else wanted him. The man at the auction said they were probably going to put him down if nobody bought him today." Sarah walked over to the truck, looking at Rusty for the first time. Despite her anger, her maternal instincts kicked in. The little calf was clearly suffering, and his infected wounds needed immediate attention. "Oh, Lucy," Sarah sighed, her voice softening. "Look at the state he's in. Even if we wanted to help him, we don't have money for a vet. And where are we supposed to keep him? We don't have proper facilities for a bull." Tom, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke up. "Sarah, I've got that old shed behind my place. It's not being used. The kid could keep the calf there temporarily. And my brother-in-law, Jake, he's a retired vet. He might be willing to take a look at him, as a favor." Lucy looked at her parents with desperate hope in her eyes. "Please, Mom and Dad. I know we don't have much money, but I'll work extra hours helping Mrs. Patterson and the Johnsons. I'll earn back every penny, I promise. I just couldn't leave him there to die." David and Sarah exchanged a long, silent look. They both knew their daughter had always had a gift with animals. They had seen her care for injured creatures before, but this was different. This was a large animal that would require a lot of resources they simply didn't have. But they could see the determination in Lucy's eyes. Rusty chose that moment to make a soft, weak sound from the back of the truck, and Lucy immediately climbed up to comfort him. As she gently stroked his head and whispered soothing words, something remarkable happened. Despite his pain and weakness, the little bull lifted his head slightly and looked directly at Lucy. It was like he was thanking her. "Look at that," Tom murmured in amazement. "That little fella knows she's trying to help him." Sarah felt her resistance crumbling as she watched her daughter's gentle interaction with the injured animal. "1 week," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We'll give it 1 week. If he's not showing significant improvement by then, we'll have to make some difficult decisions." Lucy's face lit up with joy and relief. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad. I promise I'll take such good care of him, and he's going to get better. I just know it." And from that moment on, the journey of saving Rusty had begun. What followed was more than just physical healing. It was a bond, a connection that changed Lucy's life forever. The wounded calf she had saved with $50 had become a symbol of resilience, love, and the incredible power of believing in the impossible.